Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Coronatine with a Copywriter. Today, I have the incredible privilege to interview one of the most legendary copywriters alive today, which is Bond Halbert. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
My pleasure.
Awesome. And so I'm assuming probably that everyone that sees this knows at least a little bit about you, but just for the sake of anyone that may be watching this and it's not familiar with you, can you just share just briefly maybe about your association with copywriting, some of the things that you've maybe achievements, and why I would want to speak with you today?
Well, unlike everybody else's story, which, usually comes from I was selling stuff and realized that copy was important, or, looked at copywriters and thought, what a fascinating life they have. I actually grew up in the world of copywriting, but I didn't just grow up in the world of copywriting. I grew up in the top of the world of copywriting. My father, who is, I think, the greatest copywriter who ever lived, but quite arguably easy to argue because he had more records in more niches than any other copywriter that anybody knows of. He had a greater effect on more copywriters through his teachings. And he also wrote the most widely mailed sales letter in history. And he had an incredible career. But more uniquely than that, he actually took me aside when I was very young. I was about, I'm trying to remember exactly. I was about 10 or something. And he had a proclivity for, blowing all of his money and then making his money and then blowing his money and then making his money.
Yeah.
I think he was actually addicted to the adrenaline rush of needing a big win when he, and needing. I think it was kind of like the gambler gets more happier when they come back big than when they just start winning.
Yeah. Okay.
So I turned to him and I said, I'm lucky that, I get to see how you make the money versus my brothers who could, just play with the toys and stuff like that. And he goes, oh, that's it. He started really thinking outside the box. He was thinking outside the box before, but it worked so well for him. He started thinking outside the box with parenting too. Wow. So I was all of a sudden I would go to these meetings with big name people. He'd pull me out of school to go to brainstorming sessions with people like Ben Suarez or Jay Abraham or whomever. And where they were planning on getting together with list brokers and going over opportunities and making decisions on what promotions they were going to do and things like that. And so he started actively really training me. And the other day I realized it's something that Kevin and I had as a perspective that was different from most people is, our father was so much about marketing and direct marketing that if we had come up with or a good copywriting or a good direct marketing idea, we got rewarded and praised for it the way that most kids get praised for hitting a home run in Little League.
Okay.
And so I grew up in the industry, and then I was working with my father actually in the business for ages. But of course he's, sucking up all the limelight, which is perfectly fine by me.
Yeah.
And then we're working together on a project that actually it was very much hey, we could do this and this and that. And he said, oh yeah, that would be great. And then he'd say, we could do it this way and do this way, and it would be even better. And we were working on this project, and it turned out to be one of the biggest successes he had ever had. But what then happened was, later on, when he passed away, I started, I went into a deep depression for a long time. And unfortunately, I had plenty of money to not work, and the reason I say that is because I think when a lot of people have struggles or they have problems or there's tumultuous times, they end up having to get up and do something. So that gets them motion and moving, and that makes them get on with their life better. Well, one day I got over that finally. It wasn't because I ran out of money or anything. It was just because time had ran out. It ran its course. It was about a year, I'd say. Then I realized I hadn't spoken with anybody about marketing in a long time. And it was like, I wasn't being able to exercise my brain in that manner. My brother and I weren't really like talking about things like that. So what happened is I started having some discussions with a few people, and they're like, oh, wow. And then somebody wanted to interview me, and I said, okay, sure. And they said, you mind if we ask you questions about your father? I said, I love my dad. I'll answer any question you want about my dad.
Hmm.
And then about halfway through the interview, they'd realize how much I knew, and they'd start asking me questions.
Okay.
And then
Wow.
realize I started making breakthroughs that were based on the thinking he gave me.
Mm-hmm.
And it does start with all the thinking and the way that you think and your perspective and your view of life and your view of markets, your view of the world and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Tiger Woods was Tiger Woods because he started hitting golf balls at 3 or 4.
Hmm.
So imagine, no matter who's, might get into marketing or entrepreneurial spirit or anything, imagine that is like part of your family upbringing from an early childhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way the mechanic's son or daughter looks at a car, and can instantly hear noise and kind of imagine and know, like almost like with X-ray vision, what's going on inside that engine and everything like that. Yeah. Mind is automatically set to think about big ideas, and it's automatically set to solve marketing problems, and it's automatically set to, predicting like this is going to go well, this is not going to go well, and seeing how that ends up, playing out in the real world. And so eventually what happened was I started showing some people some things about marketing, and then I became, I made breakthroughs first in getting higher email open rates than everybody. So I became kind of known as the email open rate guy. Mm-hmm. And then I started making breakthroughs with how to get Amazon to help publish and market for you, right? Mm-hmm. So I became kind of like the Amazon guy. And then I wrote the first book on editing sales copy ever written. Mm-hmm. So they kind of like, he's the editing guy. Mm-hmm. And then a few people asked me to start showing them some tricks with marketing, and they're like, hey, come on. And then, so now I'm really kind of being well known as the guy who's the best at teaching you how to do copywriting and how to do direct response marketing. But I don't want to get, it's going to happen anyway to a degree, but I don't want to be pigeonholed in just teaching people copywriting, because that big idea portion, that idea, when I go into a mastermind, my brother and I, we're there helping and supporting anybody who that needs business ideas and business solutions and needs a new, fresh way of approaching stuff or handling a problem. And we're some of the quickest people to come up with that. And it's not I don't know to what degree at all it's talent as much as it is mindset that's been drilled into us since we were children. Mm-hmm. So, we're, with all due modesty, we're terrible at all kinds of things like management, and I'm terrible with tech and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But when it comes down to that, I'm really, really good. But I have to attribute it all to my father. And he once told me, he said, Bond, whatever you do that's really good, I get all the credit because I taught you how to think. Yeah, okay. But if you screw things up, that's on you or your mom. Okay. But it really is true that, while I was able to figure out and not just hacks and not even and better ways to teach people, even better ways than he taught, because I had that foundation that he gave me. And so he does get credit for that. So, but yeah, I don't have the sleeping in my car or trying to get an eBay store to start working story like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was really excited for a plethora of reasons to be able to interview, but one of the big things is, I guess from this might be my lack of knowledge, but from what I can understand, you're one of the, if only, copywriter that kind of had just actually grew up in the industry and so.
I don't know anybody else. I remember speaking with a lady whose father was a legend and she was in the business, and I was like, I can't wait to, I think that was great. You're the only person I know that kind of grew up in the business like I did. Yeah. He said, actually, no, I didn't, because, it was only till after I was an adult, and then I had to apply to work for my father.
My goodness. Yeah. Okay.
No. It was one of those things, because I had always hoped that there would be a kindred spirit, but, I was, and it's still kind of weird to this day, I was the only kid in those meetings. And
okay.
One of the guys who was often in those meetings was a top list broker named Eric Weinstein. Mm-hmm. And he told me one time, he goes, but you were also different. He said, you absorbed it all. You understood it all. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't just that I was quiet and not disruptive. Mm-hmm. I was actually engaged. Yeah. And so I really got, and it was a really gnarly learning experience, because it was my dad would tell me what we're going to go and try and accomplish. And then I'd be in the meeting. And then on the way back, he'd say, now this is how it's really going to happen. And this is what so-and-so is going to do. And this is what I'm going to do. And, and you would get to, see everything go from a gem or a germ of an idea and then grow into something. And sometimes it would grow into something that morphed, and sometimes it didn't work, and sometimes it grew really, really big and stuff like that. And you never really, the truth is almost all big winners, no matter who you're talking to, their biggest winners are usually a surprise. They really had no idea it was going to be that big. I guarantee you that if you went back in time and you talked to Mark Zuckerberg, he had no idea that Facebook was going to be Facebook. Google, when they started out, just kind of wanted a little bit better of an engine than Yahoo. I don't think anybody, I think when there's explosive growth, and so that's your first clue is you have to have the mentality of, let's just try something really quickly. And I think they end up creating more breakthroughs than the people who are like, oh, okay, I want to dominate the world of LinkedIn, so I'm going to take and study all these LinkedIn courses, and I'm going to put together the most comprehensive package on this, and then we're going to follow all the experts' advice. That's a slow, painful, and a way that's got a high probability of failure. The highest probability of winning is, I'm trying 20 different things this month, and I'm just going to hop on a Zoom with some of my customers and see if they like this idea. I'm just going to I'm going to throw out this headline, or I'm going to try this subject line, and it's you're shocked. The highest email open rate we ever got on the Gary Halbert letter list, and this is a list that my father had been mailing. And had been growing for years, and unfortunately, we didn't even scrub the list. You're supposed to scrub your list, and get rid of all the names of people who don't open. And this thing had been built for years, so there's some older names and everything like that. And it was thousands of names, and it's 52% open rate. And I was, and I was shocked that got that open rate. Right. I thought it was a decent subject line, but I just did not know how powerful that would be. And, it's like, so when it happens is you come up with a breakthrough and you try and do it, repeat it. You try and analyze what worked about it, repeat it. And if you can repeat it 3 times as a success, you've really got something that you can do.
Wow. And then if it doesn't, then you're just happy that it worked that 1 or 2 times, and then move on to the next thing.
Well, no, you just move on. The thing is, the people who are doing that are moving on anyway. I can't tell you how many things I've done where it's like, oh, this was a great success, and people want to pay you thousands of dollars to teach them how to do this. And I'm like, well, I'm kind of bored with the subject already because I did it by accomplishment. I want to go create. There's a list of, if you look at all the people in marketing, they're the people who are the tinkerers and the scientists. They're the people who are much more like me. And they're never going to be the richest people in the business. They are going to be the people who create the breakthroughs, right? Then there's the early adopters. The early adopters follow and look at, go, oh yeah, I saw him do that experiment. It looked to work. It looked like it worked well. Let me ask him a few questions. Okay, let's early adopt this, and then they kind of tweak it, right? And I don't want to call them tweakers because that sounds like they're methods or something. But they're the early adopters. They get into something early. And then there is the more broad communicator, or somebody who's worked on building an audience, and they're following these early adopters to see what's working. They're not even following who the early adopter is following, the team. And they start broadcasting to a larger audience and saying, this is the hot new thing and everything. And then there's these mass communicators and implementers, and they have the really giant audience, and they will not and cannot share something that hasn't already been proven to be working time and time again for at least a year or more.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So by the time by the time I'm walking into a convention and they're doing speeches on something, they're always talking about something, even if it's cutting edge. If it's really cutting edge, they're talking about something I've known for 2 years. Right?
Wow. Okay.
Because I follow other tinkerers, and I follow other early adopters. Now, the people who bring the perfection, the work ethic, and the management skill to all the stuff that's been working for a year or two, they are in the game early enough to really make hay out of it, and they can dominate the game.
Yeah,
and so when you see most people who are dominating the game of anything, it's the germ of the idea never came from them. Usually, it just it went through that process.
Yeah, okay.
And it went through those people. And it's fine to be on any edge of those, because when you're a tinkerer like I am, you're never worried. Like this whole coronavirus thing and everything that happened and everything, I can easily quickly come up with a solution to how to do it. Somebody was like, how do I inject a sense of urgency for some things? And I said, it depends on the thing. And I said, give me an example. And he said, carpet cleaning. I said, okay, well, what you want to do is you email your people and say, listen, as soon as we're all allowed out of our house, everybody's going to be rushing to do spring cleaning. If you book with me now and pre-order your spring cleaning, I'll give you a discount, but I'll give you priority on the scheduling when it comes available. Yeah. And if you schedule with me now and for some reason you can't do it, I'll let you rearrange the schedule for free.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So, I mean, it's like the solution there is like instantaneous for me, because I'm tinkerer and thinking and can easily put myself in mind of a prospect. The early adopters will hear something, they make more, they work a little bit more in the tech field than the inspirational field. Okay. But they're smart enough to figure out what makes sense and what's not. So they are more contemplative. When you get to the other end of the perspective, the spectrum, you get to the manager, the mass manager, the master manager is a better way of putting it. They then implement in a way that the tinkerer could never do, because he's bored moving on to tinkering with something else. Yeah. Okay. So, the guy who invented the car is a lot different from, Ford, who's just making a whole bunch of them. And you're not going to hear because Ford's name is on every car that's driving around in the street. A lot of times you see people like, oh, this guy's famous, or this lady is famous for doing this thing. And you're like, yeah, that's not the first person who did that.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. And I guess I think perhaps maybe a struggle a lot of copywriters have is being okay with accepting, or maybe pigeonholing, I guess, as we said earlier, themselves into one of those spaces, because, well, as you said, like the tinkerers tend to move on before they can really like develop out the idea and like run with it and see the long-term impacts. Is that right?
Sort of. The thing is, the tinkerer, if you keep coming back to the tinkerer is going to like, try this and try that and try this. So they can fully flesh out an idea better than anybody else in the spectrum, because they're bored of how we got this results. They're like, what if we change this opening? So a good copywriter, a great copywriter, that works really hard. And you can have there's a combination between talent and working hard, even in copywriting. And somebody who's got a really great talent walks around thinking about the copy and the message, sits down and pounds out a really great message. And then there are the people who are going through a system for writing copy, and they can write pretty good. They will never be as good as somebody with talent who puts in quite a bit of effort, but they can still make it work. But what happens is, if I take my copy and I go back and they say, okay, how could we improve these results? I can look at the whole funnel and the whole system and the copy itself and go, okay, this needs to be tweaked. This needs to be improved. This, we could try this. Yeah. So it's not that they couldn't do that idea. I think what happens is they've moved on to a different project. And when it comes to niches, there's a good and a bad. There's a benefit and a disadvantage when you specialize in a niche. Okay. So when you come up with a niche, one of the things that works is it's easier to get clients in that niche. That's the first benefit, because if you turn around and say, look, I have a pizza joint here in Los Angeles, and I want to get people coming into my pizza joint. Now I'm at a conference with copywriters, and I asked 3 people, and the first one says, oh, I'm a copywriter, and I've worked for Fortune 500 companies, local businesses. I do Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads. I do mailers. I do direct mail. I do all of these other things. And I work for charities. I work for businesses, mom and pop, brick and mortar, online, biz op, everything like that. And the second person says, all I really do is try and work with localized, like Google AdWord marketing and stuff like that. Third person says, I specialize in driving traffic to restaurants. Okay. You're turning around and going, okay, I want you. So it's easier to sell. Number 2, the research is easier to do. Okay. You now have a whole new learning curve. There was a guy who put it better than I could have, where he said that, Facebook is okay. Like YouTube, you go to YouTube to learn how to do something. Okay. You go to Facebook because you're looking for a direct solution to something. You're not even sure what you want to learn how to do. You're just looking for a solution for a problem. Yeah. Facebook is a billboard that's scrolling by. As you scroll by, it's like driving by and seeing a billboard that you could stop and investigate further if you want to. So there's a different attitude, a different mindset. People are in a different space in their mind when they're receiving those 3 different mediums. So the message has to be different. Okay. So if you're specializing in Google ads and the Google network, that, the GDN, the Google Display Network, or you are specializing in Facebook, they are particularly talents, but it's also much different mindset. So when you come home and you find out that your child got a really bad report card, right? And you're looking for a solution to that, that is radically different from you're looking for a place to go where you're going to vacation when we get out of being on lockdown. Yeah. So you're also a different person in how you're looking. You're also a different kind. And so these things all need different messaging. And all the power, every single bit of power that you have in your research comes from marketing, the research. All the power in your marketing comes from research. And that means it takes a long while to get a really good perspective on the profile and what they're thinking and what's their mindset, what's their true core desires. And that your true core desire in business can be radically different. You can have somebody with the exact same true core desire in business, and you both have a radically different desire for your family life. One person wants no kids, another person wants 10 kids, another person, so it's only, so once you get to understanding a person that wants to grow their business, to spread a healthy message around the world, and you get to that kind of a person, you get down to that avatar is so specific. All the time and effort in there doesn't have to, you still have to do, you have to still keep up on it. So I don't want to say that you don't continue to do it. Yeah. If you don't, somebody will take your throne. But once you practice on that and you know that avatar, the job that you're doing is a lot easier because you know this market pretty well. You know the market, you know the players, you know the prospects. So the niche thing helps and works that way. However, if you want to be someone like a Gary Halbert, if you want to be somebody that can do this in multiple niches and give great ideas and all those things, you need a much broader perspective, and you need to be very, very constantly interested in other human beings. You you have to have such an immense amount of curiosity for people who whose shoes you've never walked in. You don't understand why they do the things they do. Yeah. And curious to find out why they are. When you do that, though, it opens up the world to you because, during there are people who right now, they were working in travel. And their life just blew up. They're out of work for a good year minimum, right? And I'm talking about copywriters. And then, okay, so as a copywriter, you're like, okay, well, my industry just kind of blew up. There's a couple of us that are sharp enough to figure out some messaging to help try and save clients, but there's way more people, copywriters in this niche than there's space for. But so now you want to look and you say, okay, what are the recession-proof businesses? You have insurance, you have preppers, you have golf, you have relationship advice, you have a long list of companies that are actually going to do well, right?
Yeah.
And can you write for them? Well, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know those people, you don't know them.
Yeah.
And if so, one of the advantages you can have is being somebody who's walked in many different paths in your life. You understand what it's like to be single. You understand what it's like to be married. You understand what it's like to be freshly divorced. You understand what it's like to be in debt. You understand what it's like to, excuse me, be stressed out. You understand what it's like to, be enlightened, or you understand what it's like to, discover the getting your mojo back, or getting your priorities straight.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what it's like to be a father of a little boy versus even the father of a little girl. And the more hats you've worn in your life, and the more things you have done, the more that opens you up to understanding different people.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes an entire lifetime mindset thing that never stops.
Yeah.
You're not somebody that, okay, I have this thing due in 30 days on Monday. I'm going to sit down and start working and figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
But you get more ideas. You get more, hey, what could work here? And what would work in this industry? Or what would work in this situation? Because you are that prospect, and it's easier for you to do. So I know I'm rambling a bit, but the answer is, with niches, you do have a serious advantage in choosing a niche, especially at the beginning of your career.
Mm-hmm.
But don't worry about it, because when you're really good at a niche, even if your whole thing, you spent your whole time doing insurance, and things switch around and you want to start doing travel, it's not going to stop you. All you have to do is prove you know what you're doing. Yeah. So, I went from all of these different kind of like pigeonhole things to people going, oh, wow, I want to learn from him.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so, that definitely makes sense. And I'm learning, I think, more as I interact with people, that there is kind of a structure behind any really niche. And so if you can identify, I think back, so like I learned a second language in college, lived in South America, and kind of like once I got the framework for like language learning, all of a sudden a bunch of other languages like opened up to me. Obviously I still like a lot of work, but now I like understand that there's a system going on and there's like a method, and now all of a sudden I like can pick up
English. Yes.
yeah. Well, I just like all of a sudden what I went from like speaking just one language to picking up a second, and the potential of learning like 3 others just by like starting like learning a second language. And then it's like, oh wow, all of a sudden I can pick up these random words in other languages that before I would have never been able to do that prior to like learning. So do you feel like they're kind of the investigative skills, I guess, are transferable across niches? Is that kind of what's most important, would you say?
It is. It's the critical one. It's being a good detective about finding, I would say that if you want to be if we're talking about being a cross niche copywriter, somebody who can do it in multiple stuff, and let's not just talk about cross niche, let's talk about cross prospect, because that's really the key here. I've seen some people like, well, I've sold this and I've sold that and I've sold this. Well, no, the supplement that you sold was to, an aging, stressed out business owner, male, conservative, guy in his late 50s. That's also the same person you were selling investment advice to, and that's also the same person that you were selling golf clubs to, right? So that's a lot different from being able to sell to a housewife, which is also a lot different from being able to sell to a house husband. Which is a lot different from being able to sell to teenagers, and which is a lot different from, understanding the different nuances. And that's one of the reasons I don't think there ever is going to be a Gary Halbert, because the field was so open that when he went and started studying these things, there weren't people who were automatically an expert in that prospect, right? And then in that prospect in sub niches. But if you're going to do it, you need serious investigative skills and a massive amount of curiosity, and you have to be willing to like test these ideas. You have to, you have to, if you think that that might be interesting to a teenager, you have to, I would, one of the scoutmasters of our troop. I would
Yeah.
actually say, hey, bring up the idea and see if it gets people going all like interested.
Yeah. Okay.
You test it. I remember I needed some information that I was wondering about for teenage girls. So I asked my daughter some questions, and she just gave me loads of valuable feedback.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
she gave me words and lingo and language and other things that no adult ever knew. Right? That they weren't hip on.
Yeah.
So you have to be investigative about the personality, the profile and it's not, and you have to understand it. I just recently did a research video where I was explaining it's the combination of things. So when you upload your list into Tower Data, or you upload your list, or you're looking at Google Analytics, and it tells you that 3/4 of the people you have own a home. It tells you that, many of them are consider themselves, white collar, urban career oriented professionals. It means that they have long-term, they make decisions for long-term. They play long game. They're, and with their age, you see that, 75%, the audience I did this for had 75% had children. That meant 25% were hoping, part of them were going to hope to have children. The majority of them were. So it ended up being, look, my audience is not the people who are trying to make $100,000 so they can spend half of it renting a Lamborghini. Yeah. Right. It's the combination of those factors that tell you a little bit more about them. And then you go spend time with them and you start to really understand them and understand the way they think. And so that investigative thing, and it's like the willingness to go undercover, to go be one of them, to go to the, go make a group of friends and join groups and, participate and not just be and try things, look at what the competitors are selling, buying their stuff. So that's an investigative thing that you definitely need. And you have to have an interest in the people who are outside of your particular demographic, that don't match you. Okay. And you want to see what makes people tick. I've written things that make people tick that are on the complete opposite of my political beliefs. I've seen them. I've seen what makes people tick when it comes to people who have totally different beliefs when it comes to spirituality and religion. I have been able to, work with all of these kind of, all of that stuff. It doesn't make a difference who you are. I can go in there with my mindset and my thinking, and I can tinker around and find things. And unless I just get absolutely appalled and have to leave the room because I can't stand it, I'm going to figure out the words you need to hear to make you want to buy. Okay. And so, and I would suggest definitely doing that. But again, if you want to go niche, there's nothing wrong with that. You just pick a niche that's big enough where you're constantly in demand.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's interesting. So when you say that, I think there's pretty unique skill that maybe isn't often talked about, which is, a high tolerance level, because you need to be able to expose yourself, and you're simultaneously trying to be empathetic without destroying yourself, I guess, because you're trying to understand and find out what's making these people tick, why they're thinking this way, why this matters. But if it's contrary to how you feel personally, it could be quite challenging. I think I've been surprised on social media, the amount of people that have been posting about how this is a great time for them because they're able to clean up their friends lists. And I also curate my friends list to some degree, but also this is my opportunity to be exposed to what people are thinking.
Well, I think you're 100% right, but you don't really ever have to totally lose yourself. It's just that when I think one of the things that my dad was always saying, people are just trying to do the best they can. Yeah. And I get where he was coming from with that. And I understand that the way that things work, and in a way that let me give you an example.
Yeah.
If you grew up in a cult, you would believe in that cult.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you're raised to believe it. Your parents are telling you it's true. Everybody is giving you anecdotal evidence to,
Mm-hmm.
show that everything that they believe is absolutely true. And I'm not relating this to religion
No,
as
that's all right.
religions
Yeah.
or cults, but religions are basically similar things,
Mm-hmm.
because you'll notice that everybody grows up believing in the belief system that was handed down from their great-great-grandparents to their great-grandparents to their grandparents to
Mm-hmm.
their parents to themselves. All of a sudden, it's, very few of them just like jump ship, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah.
There are some. I'm not saying that
That's
there
why
aren't, but
there's like a term of black sheep, because it's not
yeah.
common for people to not fit in with their family.
So when I look at somebody who has a belief system that I don't believe in, and that includes politics,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes all kinds of stuff, and I look at where they come from, and I look at what they've done and what they've experienced in their life,
Mm-hmm.
you end up with more of a position of empathy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you can come at things from the side. Now, the thing with copywriting, though, with copywriting, you want to enter the conversation they're having in their head,
Mm-hmm.
and you never want to argue with their belief system, ever. And people talk about changing minds. No, you don't change your minds. You don't change their mind. Their mind is here and looking this way. What you do,
Yeah.
you change their view to this side,
Mm.
right? So you're never coming back at them like this. You're changing their
Okay.
view to this side.
Mm-hmm.
So an example of this, and whether you believe it or not, especially, you're in Australia, a lot of people down there don't want to, there's the whole global warming debate as to
Mm-hmm.
how much of it's man-made and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, right? And so I grew up with smog days where people had to wear masks and we weren't allowed to exercise because there's a brown ring of smog in the city.
Okay. Wow.
And nobody wanted to put catalytic converters on cars because they said it would kill jobs, and we didn't
Okay.
want to we didn't want to do smog emissions.
Yeah.
And there's a whole part of the country that just absolutely hates the EPA, the Environmental Protection
Mm-hmm.
Agency, because they say, look, we got to stop producing all of this smog and coal manufactured electricity,
Yeah.
right? And they're all completely against it. And so if you explain your perspective, I'm like, listen, as somebody who grew up watching friends with asthma not being able to play because of smog and all of this other stuff, I'm really, there's one thing that I'm very, no matter what you think is going on, there was a good use for having the EPA come in and fix things.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, look, you're wrong. You said it was going to kill jobs last time. It added to jobs, right?
Yeah, okay.
And even though now solar's actually provides more jobs than right now, there's more jobs, I think, in solar than there are in oil in the United States.
Wow. Okay.
But I remember people would have the argument and they would say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think global warming's man-made. I think we're just getting closer to the sun. It's part of our natural evolution. There's a wobble tilt to the
Mm-hmm.
earth, which is true, and stuff like that. And I said, I don't really study that because I don't really care. The only thing I care about is clean air.
Yeah.
And I just think it'd be better if we had less smog,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that the clean tech jobs that come from producing solar panels is better than the black lung producing jobs that you get from mining coal,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's just the way and it's just my belief because I grew up in LA. And then people don't all of a sudden, they're like, okay, they're looking at it from a different perspective. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, but you can make more money at this job and not get black lung, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Yeah.
So now all of a sudden they're going, wait a minute, that's a little bit different of a perspective. It's not
Yeah.
you're right, I'm wrong. I'm not even arguing whether it's man-made or not. It doesn't make a difference what my belief
Yeah,
is.
of course. Yeah.
I want you to look at this goal. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
go from here to here. And you're just seeing roadblocks and going, I don't want to come back here. I'm going, turning around, turning your perspective and going, look, that's actually a pretty shiny, good object to go
Mm-hmm.
towards and get you to drift towards that way.
Yeah, okay.
So you can't change people's minds. You can change
Mm-hmm.
their directions.
Wow,
you can
okay.
change their, and they can change their minds and evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
There are all the people that were, and this is getting way too political, but long, long, long time ago, they said, and it's not even that long ago, where they said, people who are black shouldn't marry people who are white.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, look, there's all this emphasis in the Bible and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened is they realized it wasn't the end of the world 20 years after it was legal and people were doing it.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe, and this is the last thing I'll say politically, what they ought to do is be able to pass any law with a 50 simple majority, right?
Yeah. Okay.
51%. But after 5 to 10 years to keep that law, they need 3/4 of the vote.
Wow.
Because
Okay.
you turn around and you go, that allows us to experiment and try things. And then we get to find out if it really does mess
Yeah.
everything up or if it doesn't.
Okay.
Because sometimes we've passed laws and it's like, no, that was really bad. Let's go ahead and get rid of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And special interest has a lot harder time buying 3/4 of the vote in a government than they do
Mm-hmm.
buying getting half the vote. And so there's, sometimes you turn around and go, yeah, really, that didn't affect me very much. And it helped a lot of people, whatever, who cares? Because everybody's kind of voting on their own. But anyway, back to copywriting. Copywriting, you don't have to lose yourself ever. There's just there's only a couple things where you're just like, there's nothing good there. You can never say there's nothing good about anybody.
Yeah.
Right? No one human being on the earth is 100% good or 100% bad.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times when you're like, this person is 90% bad and I do not want to help this out.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a part of people who are trying to figure out how to use cartoon animals to get more kids smoking.
Mm-hmm.
So you back away and you're like, I'm freaking out. I'm not looking to get a copywriting job from you or for that, that's that bad.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a different perspective on things, but there's sometimes, but the majority of the time, the skill you need is actually empathy. And it's to understand and go, you know what, I guess if I was in their position, I don't believe it, but if I was in their position, I would believe these things too.
Yeah.
I would hate the EPA probably if I grew up and my parents were now poor because, they had the restrictions and, my dad lost his very lucrative coal mining job.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. It's quite interesting to see like how frequently we hold on to our experiences and feelings and aren't willing to recognize that there's a variation of that someone is feeling in their own circumstances. And so I see like a lot of people talking about empathy, and it feels the approach just seems so manufactured, kind of like hoping, but then there's not really that much of an introspective message, I feel like. Whereas like what you're saying, like we've all experienced disappointment. Maybe let me think about how I felt when I was disappointed and realize in their worldview, in their perspective, they're disappointed right now.
Or they're angry or they're elated at somebody else's misery or whatever it is. One of the key things that I try and remember about that you should know as a copywriter is I have a phrase that serves me well, which is I'm not arrogant. I'm just pretty sure you're all as screwed up as I am.
Okay.
So what that basically means is, look, I'm going to be honest, that makes me a little jealous. Nobody ever admits to being jealous. But great copywriters will turn around and they will say, you know what? This is my real feeling. This is my real emotion. Sometimes I say, yeah, because I'm a petty, small little person, but it makes me feel good, right? That means it's true that other people are petty and small about that kind of a thing, and it makes them feel good.
Yeah.
So the thing to remember is what's happening with you as you go through something or you're investigating something. Every time you're thinking it, there's tons of other people who are thinking it. You're nobody's just this Einstein genius that nobody else has ever come up to that idea or came up with that idea. And if you're clever and quick, you just come up with it faster. But the mindset that you get out of that is that your gut, you end up with the more raw and honest you are with your gut, the better off you're going to be as a copywriter.
Yeah.
Because if you're going at a copywriting perspective and you say, listen, these people, this is what they really want. They're telling you that it's for this and for that. The majority of time, the people are telling you, look, I want to help you evolve and be your most 100% self and your most authentic and all of this other stuff. The majority of the time, what they're wanting is a lot of people to envy them,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to have the kind of peace and tranquility and stability in their mental mindset that other people will envy and want.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This isn't a case of where, you know, giving people what they want is
Mm-hmm.
bad unless you're having them do something that is actually bad.
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
So if you turn around and I mean, you're, people are disingenuous when they say, I put out this video on this subject and so put this video out on the same subject, and they're getting 20 times as much likes as I did,
Mm-hmm.
20 times as many views. It's disingenuous to say, well, that's good as long as they're spreading the message and it's,
Yeah, yeah,
the,
yeah.
the truth
Mm-hmm.
is, you did it for a reason. You did it not only, to spread goodness and everything like that. Not all selfish or petty or little emotions that you have are without merit or without good use,
Yeah.
without a little bit of greed. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm not an absolutist. Without a little bit of greed, there's a lot of people who wouldn't have invented. And, there's people
Yeah,
who
I
are
know,
doing
100%.
really good stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they're spreading the words of really good stuff, but
Yeah.
because they want attention. And that's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's bad at all. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can admit that to yourself, that you want to be known as, you want a reputation for being the best at something.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be the best supplement copywriter in the world.
Yeah.
But the only supplements I sell are ones I've actually know really work and help people.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
And if that's what drives you, that's what drives you. But if you know that, it's easier to understand the prospect if you are one of them and you understand, but you have a more honest and gut reaction. Now, you can't turn around and tell somebody, let's face it, you just want to be an influencer because you're, out for attention.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They can't accept that argument.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They can't accept it. They can, however, accept the fact that, what you can do is you're shifting your focus. It's like, you've got your message, and this is a message that helps a lot of people, but the real thing that I'm going to help you do is get it out to more people. So I'm basically saying I'm going to give you more attention. That's the main focus,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that you can do more good.
Yeah.
But I'm going to word it in a way that makes you go, yes, that's what I want,
Mm-hmm.
without triggering a reflective thing that you don't want to face or you don't like.
Yeah.
And a good copywriter and a good marketer knows how to do that. And but the good copywriter and the good marketer, the reason is we've got this sick sense of humor. We have this thing I call jaded optimism. We look at the world as like, well, let's get to what's really behind the scenes of all this other stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
But we're optimistic enough to say, but in the end, if it helps people, I'm willing to help the cause, and getting paid money for it, that's a benefit. So
Yeah.
it's, a lot of people will look at it as bashing and everything, but,
Mm-hmm.
power is not wrong or bad. What's wrong or bad is what you do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
No,
Wanting power is not an evil thing.
Mm-hmm.
Wanting money is not an evil thing. It's what you do with it. If you're using it to hire people, to kill people you don't like, it's bad.
Yeah. No, perfect.
If you're using that money to, to drill wells and help people in starving nations, that's good.
Yeah, exactly. So
wanting money is not bad. Wanting attention is not bad. Wanting admiration from other people is not bad.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can embrace that and tap into that motivation and understand other people have that motivation, whether they're willing to admit it or not. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so it's really cool because kind of theme here, just coming back to like being authentic and real with ourselves. And I think we see that played out a lot in comedy because people always, well, you always take a risk, but the funniest jokes are really the ones that are kind of where the comedians make fun of themselves in a way that everyone else is just thinking all the time. But someone has to be willing to like actually admit that they are messed up or they actually had this thought, or else no one is going to do it. But as soon as you do, all of a sudden everyone is like on the floor laughing because it's a
Yep.
shared human experience. So
Or pissed off that you even brought it up.
yeah, exactly, either. And so I mean you're polarized, so you're never going to do both, but or
No, no,
then
no. But there's a percentage of it. An article and it was showing all these spring breakers. There was actually a video of them saying, we don't care about the COVID
yeah,
virus. This is my one chance to get on there. And I was like, we ought to have a database that uses facial recognition so companies can look at these people and decide whether or not they want to hire them in the future.
yeah, no, I saw that post. Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I'm like, but a couple of people got really mad. They're like, this is
Yes.
authoritarian. And I'm like, oh, no, this isn't George Orwellian. George Orwellian was government run. I said, I would rather know if somebody just blatantly didn't care about the community's health than I would care about their credit check.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
You know,
exactly. So like,
so, but the thing is, I'm saying something that a lot of people would have never admitted publicly
hmm
because they're like, well, I don't want to sound all evil and authoritarian. I'm like, no,
yeah,
you're all thinking the same thing. Am I
yeah,
the only one watching this documentary thinking that everybody sucks here?
yeah, exactly. hmm
The Fire Festival documentary, Fire Fraud.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
I'm familiar with that.
you're watching that and you're just laughing because like throughout the entire film, this is a train wreck that's happening to, and nobody's really being hurt. So you're fine with that. It's not like it's not like an actual train wreck where people are getting, maimed or anything,
hmm
but you like feel for only two people in the entire situation.
Yeah,
They're like
yeah.
vendors that were working
hmm
hard and not getting paid. Other than that, you're like, all of these people deserve this.
Yeah, of course.
But it's not, again, it's just, when you're feeling it, everybody, like 90% of everybody else is in that situation or who are watching this are feeling the same thing.
Yeah. And I
You
and
know,
I was thinking when you had that post about the spring breakers, I'm thinking too, okay, and then the flip side, like how many parents have like just blatantly either outright like have lied to their child about fulfillment or happiness that these
Yep.
kids are like reeling, they're like, no, like I've seen my parents do the 9 to 5, wait until whatever, and they're miserable. This is my moment. Like I'm going to take advantage of it now because if I don't, I might never,
I
like,
I think a lot of them are down there because their parents and everybody were telling them how great spring break was and like it was the time of their life. And if they
hmm
don't go down, they're going to miss it.
yeah,
You're actually, your best parenting technique is to actually to model. It's
mm
modeling. They're going to do what you do more than what you say.
mm.
I grew up with my mom, would go to work as a surgical nurse. You'd set your watch by the time she left and by the time she came home, super solid. Most like, just, work, it's super Midwest kind of work ethic and everything like that.
Okay.
My
hmm
dad get up in the morning, like look at the paper and say, okay, I want to go see this movie. It's playing fast. And, this is the theater where it's like better time for me to go. We'd go there and he'd grab, like if there's time to kill before we go to a bookstore
Okay.
and then go watch the movie. So,
Wow.
I'm like, I had both these perspectives to
Yeah.
choose from. And I
hmm
also had the same thing going on with their finances. It was like, well, I can either save some of my money and not sweat it the way that my dad does when he blows all of his money. Because my dad would make a lot of money and he'd blow a lot of money. And I was like, I think mom's better on this situation. So I
Yeah.
was
Okay.
more like her financially, but I was more like my father as far as work
Yeah. Exactly.
ethic. So I think what happens is if you want to teach your kids to exercise, they need to see you exercising. If you
hmm
want to teach your kids living a certain, if you want to teach your kids to work 9 to 5, you work 9 to 5. If you want to teach them to wait until they're retired to before they start fully engaging, or it's not even saying that. The thing is, you really, it's like if you got to work at what you love. If you want to have happiness is based on the amount of time that you spend happy. So
Yeah.
that means your routine has to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're working at something that you love, but if your kids see you just working at something that you hate, they just assume that all work stinks and that there's
Yeah. Wow.
no work is
Mm-hmm.
ever fun.
Yeah.
But if they do see that, you love what you do because you found it as a passion or as a calling,
Mm-hmm.
then, they might look for a job where it's a passion or a calling.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool too. That last bit about how maximum amount of time you spend happy, like for your overall happiness. So
I studied happiness actually to try, because I realized you can never be happy all the time. You just
yeah.
can't. But you can slowly increase the average, and there's a lot of things that after studying that are key to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so during this kind of lockdown stage, I've set my kids have to do certain things, and they have to do some work. They have
Mm-hmm.
to do some learning. They have to do some exploring, which can be taking Google Map trip, on
Mm-hmm.
Street View, someplace
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
they have to listen to some comedy. They have to
Mm-hmm.
communicate. They have to get into part of their community. And so my son, talks with his friends. My daughter has movie watching nights with her friends, watch
Okay.
parties.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
They have to be part of a community. So they have to call their grandmother and check in on her.
Mm-hmm.
They have to do a little bit of meditation. They have to do some exercise. They have to get out and get a little bit of air,
Mm-hmm.
and sunshine. And so, it's all based on a balance.
Yeah.
And the more that you can do that, the better off you are. Because
Hmm.
I know people who you can't tell people that you can't tell people that happiness doesn't buy money. The only time that they're really going to get that is when they've had a lot of money
Hmm.
and then lost. And it has to be they've had a lot of money, liked it or lost it.
Mm-hmm.
They lost money and found times where they were happier than when they had a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only true time that people understand that, yeah, no, you can be pretty unhappy and still have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now, nobody who can't afford to put food in their children's bellies is
Mm-hmm.
happy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just, I don't care.
No, 100%. Yeah.
You're faking it if you're happy under those
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. But that whole goal of, working harder to have a car that makes more people envious, or to, I see people driving Lamborghinis or whatever in LA, and it's like our potholes are so bad and our traffic is so bad. You can't get more than 50 miles an hour no matter what you're doing
Yeah.
from one line to another.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? And
Mm-hmm.
you realize what they're doing is they're trying to look good in a car.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They're trying to look good when they show up, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly. Yeah.
nothing more than that. They're not taking it out to the desert and opening it up and doing 200 miles an hour. But it's but anyway, so it's about, and being a little less materialist, a little more experience oriented. There's all kinds of things, but it's he who dies with the most toys does not win. It's he who spends the most time from birth to the passing happy. That's the one that wins.
Yeah. No, that sounds awesome. Yeah.
And you get bonus points for leaving behind something good and worthy that helps other people.
Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm.
People who help other people.
Wow. Well, that is a fantastic way, I think, to kind of wrap up here. That thank you so much, Juan, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule these days to chat with me and allow me the opportunity to share this with those that are bored, I guess, on the internet, hopefully. And so just want to say thank you, and it's been a real privilege to be able to speak with you.
No problem.
Really quick, I forgot to mention, is there anything that, since we're chatting, that you want to share with any potential viewers about anything that you have going on, any potential projects or endeavors, or maybe a way to connect with you?
Well, we have a brand new program, which is the reason I am so busy right now. And we've finally started teaching a lot of people copywriting from zero to hero, but it's also there to help people who need big ideas and help tweaking stuff that's even working. And we call it Halbertizing with a Z, HALBERTIZING. But you can find out more about it. I just opened it up. It exploded.
Yeah.
And I haven't even we're going to start putting up stuff on my site about it, bondhalbert.com. So just go to bondhalbert.com and check in every once in a while. And
Yeah,
you'll
that's good. Yeah.
But, if you're learning copywriting, there's really no better resource than the Halberts. And so it starts with the GaryHalbertletter.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go to bondhalbert.com and learn more about the program that we're putting together. Or go to the Gary Halbert Copy Club on on Facebook. We have a thriving group of people.
It's really great. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's that. If you're interested in copy, those are the places that you want to be hanging out in for sure.
Yeah.
And you'll get introduced, and you'll get a lot of good perspective from people who are professional direct response copywriters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the group is definitely awesome. So, well, fantastic. Thanks again, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And so I'll catch you around.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.